Good evening, Gamecocks, and welcome back to Season 2 of Gamecock Gameday.
This season, we will lay down everything you need to know about Gamecock men's and women's basketball, plus a brand new segment around the Horseshoe where we will put our sports knowledge to the test.
Stay tuned to hear our thoughts on the South Carolina basketball season so far, our new Around the Horseshoe segment, and what's coming up in Gamecock basketball.
All that and more coming up. Welcome to Gamecock Game Day.
Thanks for sticking with us, Gamecocks. I'm Zander Collins.
And I'm Austin McConnell. Gamecock men's basketball is off to a rough start in SEC play. They are currently 0-9 in the conference and sit at the bottom of the SEC standings. Their latest losses come from number 13 Texas A&M on Sunday and Georgia last Tuesday.
Despite the 76-72 loss on Sunday, one Gamecock was able to find some success. Newly named to the Oscar Robertson Trophy midseason watch list, sophomore Colin Murray-Boyles was able to put up 22 points, going 11 for 16. Murray-Boyles is currently leading the SEC in field goal percentage, shooting over 50% from the paint.
A rough start is exactly...
Understatement.
Yeah, I don't think there's a better way to describe that. 9 SEC teams inside the top 25. It's a hard conference.
It's the best basketball conference.
It is the best basketball conference.
And football.
It's just, we've been so close.
Yeah.
But CMB has no help. He is on an island. He is completely alone. He is borderline lottery pick, if not a lottery pick. He leads the team in points, blocks, rebounds, and steals, basically everything other than assists. And we just can't buy a win right now. Yeah, he's scoring. He's getting in the paint, like you mentioned just in your read there. It's been brutal for CMB. He's putting the team on his back, and he's gotten us close, but he's not getting the help he needs to get the wins.
Yeah, no, for sure. You see it every time he gets down on the low block. They force the ball to him, and most of the time he is able to score, but it's really only him. I mean, we've seen the progression of Zachary Davis later in this season being able to put up some good performances, but I mean, it's impressive that he leads the SEC in field goal percentage, but I mean, that doesn't really mean anything when you're not winning games. They are on a 9-game losing streak. They only have 9 more games left in the season. There's not much more he can be doing, and like you mentioned, the mock drafts and stuff, ESPN have him 8th, so it's not even like he's the end of the lottery guy. He's one of the best prospects in the country and has no help, and therefore they're not really getting any results. Yeah,
they just gotta help him out. I know they've dealt with a couple injuries so far. They've been kind of snake bitten with transfer portal this past offseason with, our guys leaving last year or graduating. But CMB, he's just a sophomore. Like, he's still a young guy. And in basketball, like, you can go after 1 year in the NCAA, but I mean, he's tired. He looks tired at the end of these games. He looks so worn down just because he can't get the help he needs. I mean, we got a couple guys putting up points, but I think there's 2 guys, if I'm not mistaken, and one of them is CMB, who are averaging double-digit points per game.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, as you're mentioning, Austin, the loss of Talon Cooper and Michi Johnson has been huge, but it also has given him that bigger role in the offense. But you can tell he's pretty frustrated. There were a couple times in that Texas A&M game where he had some words for his teammates after he was setting screens and they weren't using them, or the one time he was open, it was a good idea to give him the ball, he wasn't getting it. So you can definitely tell he's a little bit frustrated, especially because with stuff like this, that could tank his draft stock, that he's not proving to be a winner. And it's especially disappointing after the season they had last season, his freshman year. But I mean, not a great season so far, but Colin Murray-Boyles is great as always.
Traveling over to the other side of the court, Gamecock women's basketball set a new SEC record on Monday with their 70th consecutive home win over Auburn. The Gamecocks bested the Tigers 83-66 with an all-around team effort.
Freshman Joyce Edwards scored double digits for the 8th game in a row, leading the team for the 10th in the season with 18 points. Malaysia Fulwiley put up 17 points for the Gamecocks, clocking her 12th double-digit scoring game of the season.
Other key players for the Gamecocks include Chloe Kitts with 13 points and a team-high 9 rebounds, and Raven Johnson with a career-high 6 steals.
Something I really want to highlight in this game, Austin, against Auburn, a lot of the stats look similar between the two teams until you get to those defensive stats. They had similar field goal percentages, similar assist numbers, just similar rebounds on both sides of the ball. But then you go to the defensive stats, and Auburn had 5 steals. We had 16. We had 3 times as many blocks as they do. That creates so many extra possessions, and it's the reason why the Gamecocks were able to run away with this game and win handily by 17. So, I mean, big defensive effort from Raven Johnson and full Wiley, like we mentioned in the beginning. But, I mean, when you have people talented like this on offense and then they can continue to produce on defense and continue to get your team extra possessions with the ball, that's why they're one of the best teams in the country, if not the best.
It's been an all-around defensive effort, except for one game this year, and that was against UCLA. Yeah. That was our one loss. It hurts, I'm sure, as fans, but it's honestly what I think the Gamecocks needed this year. I think, after going undefeated, going and winning a couple big games early this season, I think UCLA kind of snapped them back to reality, and they showed them that they do have an Achilles heel. But they've figured that out. Don Staley made sure that they figured it out, and they've beaten so many ranked teams, played 5 ranked games in a row before beating Auburn last week. So it's just, they have been phenomenal, and they have cleaned up their mistakes, and it is the complete opposite of the men's basketball narrative.
Yeah.
They are just continuing to win, and they have a couple more ranked games coming up, which we'll discuss later. But all eyes are on them and UCLA right now. I think it's those two just tearing away from the field. I think the Gamecocks are maybe a couple wins away from maybe locking up a 1 seed in the tournament.
Oh, for sure.
Just can't suffer any more losses down the road. But 5 ranked wins in a row plus Auburn, they're doing much better since UCLA.
And how about Joyce Edwards leading the team in points per game as a freshman? There was kind of some confusion as to how the offensive production would continue after the ACL injury to Ashlyn Watkins, but she's continued to prove why she's such an amazing player. Also this week, Asia Wilson, her jersey retired. She was practicing with the team, so doesn't hurt to get some advice from 2-time WNBA champion and MVP. Not that they need that much, coaching other than Don Staley, but obviously that's a really cool thing to see. And going back to that LSU game, Kim Mulkey said it best in her really, really Southern accent. 10 McDonald's All-Americans. How do you even prepare for that when you're going up against them? Because it's really a pick-your-poison thing with this team, so many talented players. And, yeah, really just that one blemish in the record was UCLA. But, I mean, to lose one game and it's to the team that's ranked first in the country, that's not the worst thing in the world. And
it was still on the road, so we still have that home win streak. It was still early in the season. It was before Thanksgiving, which feels like forever ago now. So it's just, like I mentioned, they've cleaned it up. It was great to see Asia Wilson there with her jersey retirement. That was really cool to see. Just excited to see what they can do. Hopefully men's basketball can kind of feed off what the women are doing, maybe take a more defensive approach and not let up so many points a game. Yeah, they should. But Don Staley's got that team figured out, and I think that's why the UCLA loss was such an eye-opener, such a slap to the face.
Well, I mean, you look at the rest of the schedule, 18 double-digit wins, 2 by 40+, and the 2 40+ were against ranked teams in Iowa State and Oklahoma. You really got to feel bad for some of these teams when they look on their schedule and see South Carolina. I mean, just such a talented team, and they're proving it every single week.
And we mentioned how strong the SEC was in men's basketball. I mean, they've got pretty much the same amount of opponents ranked inside the top 25 in women's basketball. So just basketball's running through the SEC this year, both in the men's and women's. Glad to see that at least South Carolina on the women's side is holding their own.
Yeah, for sure. Coming up after the break, we have a new segment where we'll go head-to-head with a new guest every week to put our Gamecock sports knowledge to the test.
It's a new semester, a new season of Gamecock Gameday, and we've got a brand new segment for you all. This is Around the Horseshoe. Welcome in, everyone. I'm Ryan Stinson, and I will be your host for the next few minutes as we get some hot takes on the latest Gamecock sports news. The rules are simple. I'm going to give these lovely gentlemen a topic, and they will look to impress me not only with their knowledge, but by having the best take of the bunch. This week we'll have 3 topics, and at the end of each topic, I'll award 2 points to the person with the best take and 1 point for the next best take. After all the topics, we'll have a winner who will take home some coveted bragging rights until next week till we do it all again. With that out of the way, let's get to introducing our panel for this week. Of course, we have Gamecock Gameday's very own Zander Collins and Austin McConnell. Welcome in, gentlemen.
Pleasure to be here. Very excited.
Thanks for having us, Ryan.
I'll take these guys down.
Absolutely. Excited to hear y'all's takes. And our guest this week, we have our fellow SGTV sports reporter and commentator extraordinaire, Calvin DeLude.
Thank you guys for having me on. Super excited to be here today.
Extraordinaire, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what they tell me.
Absolutely. All right. Let's go around the horseshoe. We begin this week with some Gamecock football news. Head coach Shane Beamer led the Gamecocks to some historic feats this season, with the team posting 9 wins for only the 8th time in program history. He was named SEC Coach of the Year by 3 different outlets and was a finalist for National Coach of the Year. And now he's got some more dough for all that success. Beamer and the Gamecocks recently inked a contract extension lasting until 2030. He is set to be paid $8.15 million next season, with increases of $100K every year. Now, we've seen a meteoric rise in Gamecock football these past 4 years, and it just seems to keep going up and up and up. So my question for you all, what is the ceiling? What do you guys think Beamer will be accomplished by 2030? And will it be worth the money? We'll start with you, Zander, and then Austin, and then we'll finish up with Calvin.
Fellas, it was a great season this last season. Obviously, we kind of exceeded expectations. Coach Beamer's been great for us the past 4 years. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. I think the ceiling for this team is a bowl game each season, maybe 1 playoff appearance. I mean, obviously, we've got a plethora of talent, but what's keeping those guys around? Lenore Sellers and Dylan Stewart will likely go to the draft next year, and he'll have to rebuild that all again. We lost players to the draft this season, like Rocket Sanders, and we lost out on Justice Haynes in the transfer portal to kind of replace him. We also lost Kyle Kennard, who is Shane Beamer's only consensus All-American player in his tenure. And I just think with other teams in the SEC, auto bids are too difficult for the playoffs a lot of the time. And even when we are one of the hottest teams in the country, we get overlooked kind of for those other spots. And you know, teams like Texas joining, Oklahoma had a poor season, but they're now here in the SEC. Georgia, Alabama, it's going to be hard to get over those guys. And just I think there's always bigger fish. There's always another team with more money who has more pulling power than we do. Even with a great season like this, I think it's hard to continue anything more than just looking for bowl games.
Well, when it comes to conference play next season, we play the same opponents, just flopped at home and home. So we'll have Alabama here. We'll be going to Ole Miss. We're going to have a chance to avenge those losses, especially with LSU, which we felt like got ripped away from us there. I think everyone here on campus could agree with that one. But I just want to see consistency. We've gotten back to the postseason. We've gotten back to a bowl game. Unfortunately, fell short, but we put up a good fight, had a couple of opt-outs. That's the state of college football nowadays. What are you going to do? I just want to see consistent bowl games. Like you kind of mentioned, maybe a one appearance. That would be my challenge. Just get to a playoff. In 2026, they're expanding from 12 to 14 teams. That gives us kind of where we finished last year before we lost to Illinois. That we were kind of ranked around that spot. We could be one of those final teams getting in, and being in the SEC. You know, I don't believe in SEC bias, but it definitely helps being in one of the harder, if not the hardest conference in college football. So I just don't want to take 1 step forward like we did this year and then 2 steps back. I don't want to go back to 5-7 next 2 seasons, and then we have to rebuild, have to find a new quarterback. We hit the transfer portal hard enough. I think Shane Beamer does a great job on the transfer portal and just recruiting in general, and I think he's really building something here. So just build on that and keep taking those steps forward and then get to a playoff game.
Well, I like what you said about the transfer portal for sure. I mean, based off the season that the Gamecocks just had, I think that that's so incredibly helpful for them down the road and looking to the future. You know, people are choosing South Carolina over programs that on paper might be better, they might make more money from, because of the program that Shane Beamer has built here in South Carolina. And because of that, you know, we're seeing some of the top prospects in the transfer portal come to South Carolina to play under him. And also, you know, obviously Lenore Sellers plays a big part in that. He's proven himself as one of the top quarterbacks in college football, especially after how he played down the stretch last season. And, you know, as you mentioned, my guess is if not next year, the year after that, we'll be seeing him, you know, go to the NFL. But you're already seeing Shane Beamer recruiting his replacement. You're seeing him try and go after some of the top quarterbacks prospects right now. So honestly, I really think it's only going to get better and better for the Gamecock football team. I expect them to be in the playoffs at least twice by the end of Shane Beamer's current contract extension.
Nice. Wow. Okay.
All right, I'm loving all of the transfer portal talk. I mean, obviously one of Shane Beamer's biggest characteristics as a head coach is just the way he recruits. High school transfer portal, he's just got this prolific personality that really just attracts, like you all mentioned, attracts some of the top players in the country to this program. Even if we don't have the biggest NIL budget compared to teams like Texas or A&M or even Alabama, we've got a culture here that is unmatched in the SEC. So that's why I really like Calvin's point for this round. I'm going to give him the 2. Austin, you're going to get that 1 point.
I guess so.
I did my
knows his
research.
stuff.
He
Don't
knows ball. He knows ball.
All right, moving on. How about some softball action starting up this week? The Gamecock softball team has been put into an interesting spot this upcoming season. They have a new coach, new staff, and several new players added to the program, creating a new vibe and new levels of expectation. After letting former head coach Beverly Smith go last year, USC hired former Gamecock pitcher Ashley Chastain-Woodard from UNC Charlotte. She led the 49ers to back-to-back NCAA tournaments the last 2 years and has established herself as one of the top pitching coaches in college softball. And with her comes a slew of transfer portal talent, including 6 players following Chastain-Woodard from UNC Charlotte. Some notable new additions to the team include pitcher Sam Gress, All-American infielder Ariana Rhodey, and utility player Quincy Lelio from Oklahoma. However, the Gamecocks are in the SEC, a conference that sent all of its teams to the tourney last year and is adding Texas and Oklahoma, the top 2 programs in college softball this past season. This tough slate of opponents week after week will be sure to test Coach Chastain-Woodard's success in year 1. So does this build a team approach lead to success for this first year, or will this team need to settle in for the long haul and rebuild under a longer process? Calvin, let's start with you this time.
Well, I'm really excited to see what she does with the team this year. I expect them to get out to a hot start, not necessarily because of the new staff, the new team, new players, basically because they have a pretty easy schedule to start off the year. They don't play a ranked opponent until the end of February when they play Duke, and then they play I can't quite remember who in Oklahoma a few weeks after. But I think definitely if we don't see success this year, next year and the year after that and down the stretch, we're going to see some better softball from South Carolina, who's already proven themselves as a very great softball program in the NCAA. But yeah, so I think to start off, we're not going to see immediate success maybe this season, but down the road I expect them, because she's proven herself to be a very great coach. She has an impressive resume, being an assistant coach at MSU, Ole Miss, and as Ryan put, great coach at Charlotte for the 49ers, an impressive win percentage there for her there. So I expect her to be great for this program.
Yeah, it's cool seeing a former Gamecock come back to coach or be just a part of the university, a part of the team. As of January 21st, just a few weeks ago, we have received 3 votes to be inside the top 25 of the NCAA polls. So they're already acknowledging the conference we play in. And I mentioned that with football in our last question, but I'm going to bring it into softball too. We play in the SEC, which is, bias aside, probably the best conference in all of sports, across all sports, I should say. So I love the hire. I think Chastain-Woodard's going to have success here coaching at South Carolina. I think it's going to take some time, though. I think you can't just run into Oklahoma and Texas and even Florida, who finished top 3. I think they're ranked 2nd in the opening polls. It's tough to beat them. And then you also got LSU, A&M, and more inside the top 10, top 15. You're going to run into these opponents. They're going to be difficult to beat. And for a first-year coach, that can be overwhelming. I'm not saying she's going to be overwhelmed. I just think she's going to have a really tough time beating these powerhouses and these blue bloods of softball. So I don't think the team as a whole is going to fail. I just think it's going to take maybe a couple seasons longer than people are expecting. It's going to take a few seasons just to compete for an SEC title and definitely a tournament title. But I'm really excited to see how they match up against Duke, like you mentioned, because that was the team we faced in the tournament last year and lost to them twice, actually, so we couldn't advance in Durham. So I'm really interested to see how they match up against Duke, and then that'll kind of gauge us about how we'll go about Oklahoma's matchup.
I think it takes no time at all. Chastain-Woodard, a very accomplished coach, won pitching coach of the year at Ole Miss when they went to the Super Regionals. Also, the last 2 seasons at UNC Charlotte brought them to the postseason. The things we saw last season with Gamecock softball, they were very inconsistent. There would be series where, for instance, against Florida, they lost 11-6. and then beat them 6-2, and then the next game lost 7-6. So it's just a little bit inconsistent with those players. As you mentioned, Austin, Chastain Woodard has experience as a player and as a coach at South Carolina, assistant coach there before she left for Michigan State. But I trust her. I trust the people that she's brought in. She knows the sport inside and out. Like you mentioned, she had a great win rate at Charlotte, 61.6%. So, which actually was 67% in conference play. So these teams that you guys are worried about in the SEC, she knows how to win conference games, and I think that with the inconsistencies we saw with an already pretty decent squad last year, will be taken away by this coaching change and these players she's bringing in from these good programs.
Let me ask you this: what do you think is the ceiling now, since it's not going to take any time at all? Like, what do you think happens this season?
Well, I think obviously a postseason berth is expected for this squad. Maybe they go to the next round. I mean, I'm not too familiar with the playoff look of softball, but I think with the experience that she's had, she's even bringing them a conference title for the 49ers in the last couple of years. I think that she knows postseason softball, and I think that maybe they can win a couple series in that one.
It's true. She obviously does know postseason softball. The question is, does she know postseason SEC softball or even regular season SEC softball within this current format? And especially with Texas and Oklahoma coming in. You mentioned we've got Oklahoma on the softball docket middle of the season. It's going to be a tough transition, I think, for Chastain Woodard to come out of a team like Charlotte, where she was able to have success in a conference like the American, to the premier conference in college softball that's now just getting leagues and leagues better, adding the top two teams. I do agree it's going to take time. Austin, I'm going to give you the 2 points for this one. Calvin, you're going to get the 1 point for this. It's just going to be a process. It's going to be the long haul. And this team saw some success. I think a lot of people really saw the firing of Bev Smith last year as kind of really out of the blue, an unexpected turn of events out of the athletic department. But there's obviously a lot of trust in Chastain Woodard. There's obviously a lot of hype as we head into this game that she's going to do good. I just don't know how immediate that's going to be when you head into a conference that is as tough of the SEC. So, Austin 2, Calvin 1. We'll move on to our last segment here. Men's basketball has continued their winless streak in SEC games. They've now fallen to 0-9 in conference after their loss to 13th ranked Texas A&M. However, the Gamecocks have managed to hang in there with some of the top teams in the conference. They've managed to be within 5 points of several top-ranked SEC teams, including taking 14th ranked Mississippi State to overtime. With all these close calls, it's a wonder if they will finally make it over the hump and get a conference win. So, what will it take for the Gamecocks to stop the slide? Or will they? Austin, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts?
I'm excited to get into this one. I've got a lot to rant about. But I want to bring you back to last year. We were 3-2 in conference play until January 23rd, when we beat number 6 Kentucky at home. Stormed the court, it was great. Took care of Missouri that following Saturday. And then that next Tuesday, we went on the road and beat number 5 Tennessee. So immediately, we go from 3-2 to 6-2 in conference with 2 top 6 wins. That's pretty impressive. All you need is that one win to get you on that win streak in conference. I feel the same about this team. CMB, we talked about earlier, on an island right now. Has no help at all. Yeah. He is struggling. But if we can find a way to get that one win, I think that takes the pressure off not only him, I think that takes the pressure off Lamont Paris and the rest of the team. We won't be the 6th seed. It's not going to be that magical like it was last year because we did lose a lot of guys. But we could be a 14th seed if we get the necessary wins, and especially with how everybody feels like is ranked in the SEC, if we can steal a couple down the stretch and do well in the SEC tournament, we could be dancing for the 2nd straight year. We have 2 top 5 losses by a combined 4 points. Number 5, Florida, and number 2, Auburn. Again, Colin Murray-Boyles had a great game, just couldn't find a way to get the win in the crunch time when we needed it. They just need to see one go through the hoop, pun intended. And they can make another run just like they did last year. However, time is running out, and they need that win now.
Folks at home, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. I'm not buying it. 9 in a row losses. I mean, they've only got 9 games left, so even if they win,
9-9.
even if they win out, which they won't, because like you said, to put your point against you, this team is not as talented as it was last year. I think that there's not much left for them to play for. Even like you look at their schedule, they play Kentucky again. I mean, let's be realistic. Kentucky blows that team out of the water. I think maybe obviously I think they'll win at least one conference game. Let's be realistic, but I don't think that there's even any hopes of the tournament. Saw the recent numbers. It's like we have less than 3% chance. I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I wouldn't bet on that team. But I mean, like you said, Colin Murray-Boyles is good. I think the last thing that they have to play for is just to boost that guy's draft stock. I mean, he's like, what is there even for them to do? Because like, obviously it's cool to lose to big teams by only a little bit, but I mean, that's still a loss on your record. That doesn't really prove anything.
I didn't say that was cool. I'm actually very upset that they haven't gotten those wins. But what are they just going to pack it up and like call it a season? They still have half their conference.
Well, obviously
games
they're
left.
still going to try. I just don't think it's going to be to any avail. It's been a rough season. I think that next season there's going to be a lot of changes in the program. Last season, a lot of people were saying was a fluke. I don't necessarily think that. They're just not living up to the expectations that they built themselves last season. And just, it's Colin Murray-Boyles to the NBA. Let's get him higher up to a better situation, I guess. I don't know. That's really all I see them playing for at this point. In that game against Florida that you mentioned, it just showed how easy it is for that team to just collapse in the last half of games. They were up until Florida took the lead with the last shot that they took. So, I mean, I don't know. It's been a disappointing season. I don't think that there's much left for them to even play for.
Well, I just want to start off by saying, Zander, I think you need to apologize to Ryan because clearly you said something to upset him before the broadcast tonight.
Must have.
But yeah, no, I mean, I like what you said about how it just takes one win to kind of spark the team, but also it could take one loss to completely divot them. And we've seen that so many times this year, so many close losses, and the 9-game losing streak now haven't beaten an SEC opponent yet. I really just don't think this season's going to get any better. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't win another game the rest of the year, just based on the trend that it's going. Realistically, I think they have a good chance to not only win one more game, but also win a conference game, at least once for the rest of the season. But just thinking realistically, I don't see any chance that they have to turn this season around. But looking for the future, I think their top priority this offseason needs to be getting three-point shooting help for Colin Murray-Boyles because, as you said, he's on an island right now. He's all by himself. He's doing everything for this team. And you have guys that are trying to put up threes in clutch situations, and those clutch threes just aren't getting knocked down, and the games that really mattered and the games where you need to see those shots get hit, they're just not being hit.
Zachary Davis hits them off the backboard sometimes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, even the guys that are like the better shooters on the team are only shooting about 25%. So.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, South Carolina's ranked 212th in three-point shooting percentage this season, and it's just it's a problem. You have your one guy that you're relying on so heavily. He's leading in almost every stat. And you got to get him some help for next year because if you want him to stick around with this program, have any shot at competing in the future, he needs to be on this team, Colin Murray-Boyles, and you got to get him some three-point shooting help because I feel like that's just been the biggest problem for the team this year.
We also had a lot more size last year. We were able to work it in the paint when the three-point ball wasn't working. Right now, we're playing like the Celtics. We live and die by the three-point ball.
Yeah.
Currently, we're only dying right now. So I agree with you on that three-point help.
But they're going to go to the tournament, right?
Well, hey, if they can find a way to get out of the war zone.
Trust me, I hope he's right. I really do.
I like
That'd
the
be
positivity
awesome,
approach. I think I'm always going to watch him. I'm going to be excited about him. There have definitely been some times this season that my heart's been ripped out of my chest, especially that Florida game.
Yeah, that was rough.
I think if they really can just piece together those final 5 minutes in the second half, it's going to, maybe they're not going to go 9-9 now. They're not going to win out and beat every team they play, but they can get maybe more than just a couple conference wins, maybe get 3 or 4, and then who knows? You make a little noise in the SEC tournament. It is the SEC. Who knows? I mean, you're probably gonna have to go to the semifinals, and they may not do that. I am still a little realistic, but we'll see what happens. I'm excited. I think you're right though. They gotta get that 3-point help.
Well, Zander, we're finally getting you on the board here right at the buzzer. You're going to get the 2 points for this. I agree with the take that Colin Murray-Boyles is he is the team. He is the team at this point. And you look at last season and all of the success that we had, You can add Colin Murray-Boyles, but he was surrounded by talent like G.G. Jackson. We lose him to the draft. Michi Johnson, we lose him, transfers back to Ohio State. And we just don't have that same level of talent. And when you look at our close games, it's because we have some big efforts out of guys like Zachary Davis, and that's it. Like, we have a couple of really good performances out of a couple of guys, but we just cannot get the whole team to play at an SEC level, and that is the detriment for the Gamecocks. I don't think it's fully all hopes lost. There are a couple of opponents that I think are only slightly above us in terms of talent that we could, if a couple players have a really good day, we can, maybe take that momentum and ride it to a win. But I really don't think there's a lot that this team can do heading into the final half of this season, especially in such a conference. The SEC is a basketball gauntlet this year, as you guys mentioned, on both sides of the court. And it's just going to be tough with this talent level for the Gamecocks to make it past that hump. So, Zander, we're going to have 2 points awarded to you. Not going to be enough for the win, though, unfortunately. Good luck again next week. And, don't try to insult me before the show next time, man.
Rigged.
So, with that final point, I am going to give it to Calvin, which means he is this week's winner of Around the Horseshoe. Congratulations. And Calvin, thank you for joining us this week. Austin, Zander, I'll see you back next week. Hopefully y'all can give me some better takes.
Yeah, I got to brush up on my notes, apparently. I'm a little too out of this world with my thoughts and ideas, apparently.
I think Austin will agree. As the host of this show, I think it was rigged. I'm just kidding. Congratulations, Calvin. I'll actually shake your hand this time.
Appreciate it. Thank you very
much.
much.
It's great. We're glad to have you on.
Yeah, no, this was a blast. Really enjoyed it. Thank you guys for having me on. Hopefully, I can be back at some point this season so I can beat you again. But
Calvin and I will be on the SGTV softball broadcast tomorrow. So
that is true. Yeah,
you
gotta
see
get
more
locked
of
in.
him if you're sad to see him go tonight. Don't be too alarmed. He'll be right back here tomorrow. So can't wait to work with you, buddy.
Yes, sir. You too.
Yeah, absolutely. Tune into that. Well, I'll hopefully see you guys next week if these two kind gentlemen invite me back onto the show. We got more Gamecock Game Day right after this.
Welcome back, Gamecocks. Here's a look at the upcoming basketball schedules for our Gamecocks. Dawn Staley and the women's basketball team will be hitting the road tomorrow to take on Georgia at 6. They then will be traveling further west to number 4 Texas on Sunday at 2 p.m.
Lamont Paris and the men's team will also be hitting the road this weekend to take on number 14 Kentucky. Then they will return home to Colonial Life next Wednesday for Ole Miss at 7.
Let's talk women's basketball first.
Let's talk it.
Georgia, bottom of the SEC. Let's move on. Gamecocks take that one. I mean, seriously, they just looked bad all season. I think even we talk about the ranked teams struggle to even be within 30 points sometimes of our team. So I think it's going to get ugly. It's going to be a bloodbath. I think a lot of players are going to get their career high in points against Georgia. What do you think about it?
I think this is going to be the quickest prediction segment of our show, or our show's history, I should say, because it's going to be a bloodbath. I mean, South Carolina, they are already looking ahead to Texas and UConn coming up. Like, it's going to be, they've got bigger fish to fry. But don't overlook Georgia. I'm just saying, it's SEC ball still. Don't overlook them. You can't allow yourself to fall into these trap games. And when you're looking towards Texas and when you're looking towards UConn, you can't just mosey on through these games. Dawn Staley, maybe. But it's just don't make it closer than it needs to be.
But obviously, they win. They win.
They will win.
Yeah. And then moving to Texas, obviously they're ranked 4. Last time we played them, they were ranked 5. Didn't matter then. Tahina Paopao and Chloe Kitts taking care of that one. Both had 11 in that game, leading the scorers. And don't get me wrong, I think Texas is a very talented team. Players like Madison Booker, who's averaging 16 points a game, and Taylor Jones, who's averaging 13 of her own. I just don't think it's enough. I think that a lot of their best players are down low, and their guard play can't keep up with our guard play. Tessa Johnson, Tahina Paopao, just an amazing backcourt. I think, and we've also, like I said, we've seen it this season, 67-50. You even made a video about it. Go check that one out. But I think that this one will definitely be closer than Georgia, but I still think they get it done because they're the hottest team in the country.
They are. And I mentioned earlier when discussing UCLA and that loss in that game, it was on the road. And that UCLA environment was very rowdy. I expect nonetheless from Texas, because they're rowdy about every sport. And they have a reason to be. They are a top 5 team in the country. So I think Texas is going to be a strong crowd. They're going to bring a lot of noise. I think Don Staley's team is going to have to deal with that. But I think once they get through the first 5 minutes, as long as they don't fold under the pressure like they did against the Bruins, I think they can win on the road.
We've seen, even in close games like the LSU game, it was close for a while, but once it gets into that second half, the Gamecocks really show their ability and their skill, and they start to run away with it because teams just, it's really hard to keep up with them. So I think maybe this one stays close for maybe the first quarter, and then in the next 3, Gamecocks show why they're the number 2 team in the nation.
Absolutely.
And then moving to men's basketball, what are you thinking about this?
Well, apparently I've got unrealistic expectations according to Ryan
Hey, we're on the same
and
team now.
Zander.
We're on the same team now.
Okay, that is true. We'll gang up on him next week. But no, I'm excited. I think Kentucky is beatable. They just lost to Arkansas.
Yeah, they lost 4 of their last 5.
Yeah. So it's definitely interesting matchup.
Still better than the last 9. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But they have had really good wins this season, quality wins over teams like Duke, Gonzaga, Florida. It's kind of the same thing I was talking about with the women's team in Texas. I think that Kentucky's guard play just highly outweighs ours. They've got 3 great guards, Otega Owa, Lamont Butler, and Jackson Robinson, all averaging over 13 points a game, and that's incredible to have 3 guards do that. So I just think, even if Kentucky's at their lowest point in the season, I think that still their ceiling is, or their floor is higher than our ceiling, unfortunately, this season. So I think I'm going to say Kentucky probably takes that one.
I think so too, but I think it's gonna be closer, like it has been all year. We've played up to our opponents. I think you forget that we have beaten Clemson. That is our one ranked win of the year, but it's always great to beat Clemson, no matter how bad we're doing. Kentucky, they are beatable, like I just mentioned. I think that's just Kentucky's play, though. Whenever we watch them in March Madness, whenever we watch them late into SEC play, they start to crumble and they start choking some of these games away.
Yeah.
I think this is an opportunity going back to around the Horseshoe, where I was like, all you need to get is 1 win. This maybe could be it, because it was the win last year, and I think Kentucky's a little broken right now. So that if the Gamecocks can pounce on that, Lamont's got them in a good spot.
Also, the first season without John Calipari. Obviously, he's at Arkansas now. So maybe it gets a little bit difficult for Kentucky, but I struggle to see a realm in which South Carolina wins that game. But I do think the other game that they're playing coming up, Ole Miss, is a great opportunity for them to get their first win in SEC play. We have 2 players that average more than their whole team in rebounds. Nick Pringle and Colin Murray Boyles averaging more than forward Malik Dia for Ole Miss. And they too are in a little bit of a rut, losing 4 of their last 6. But of course, before that, they beat Alabama. So it's kind of one of those teams that's hard to predict. It was hard to predict in football season. They ended up crushing us. But I think that if they're going to win an SEC game, I think that this one goes our way, because they're just not very good on the glass.
Yeah, I think that's kind of been our Achilles heel, is, when CMB doesn't get that help, we're not getting rebounds, and we're not crashing the glass like we need to. I think, like you just mentioned, I think this is a great opportunity for us to beat Ole Miss to the punch. Don't let them get those second chance points. Don't let them get those rebounds and go right back up with it. So I think this is a good opportunity for the Gamecocks to show their defensive side a little bit, but also take care of the ball on offense.
Yeah, you mentioned the rebounds. That basically lost us the game against Florida. There were many times where the Gators were able to get offensive boards that led to second chance point opportunities, and that was really what killed us in the end, because like I said in Around the Horseshoe, they took the lead with their very last shot. We were up the whole game, and the rebounds killed us. That's fundamental ball, man. Got to get those boards, got to get those second chance opportunities, and just kind of stop the other team from getting those opportunities. But like I said, I think that this is a way better bet than trying to win against Kentucky. So maybe they finally do it. Maybe they get the momentum, like you were saying. But I'm excited for that one more so than Kentucky, because I think we have got a better shot.
Yeah.
But that wraps up our show for tonight. Thanks for tuning in to Gamecock Game Day.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram, X, and Facebook at SGTV at USC. To keep up with all of our content, be sure to also visit us online at sgtv@usc.com. I'm Austin McConnell.
And I'm Zander Collins. From all of us here at SGTV, have a great night, Carolina. Forever to thee.